Welcome into the latest edition of PL Express. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about this weekend. We're obviously going to start with the title race. We're going to talk about Chelsea losing under Frank Lampard, Manchester United with a win, but Erik ten Hag not very happy about the schedule right now. Marcus Rashford injured. So lots to discuss, Janusz Michallik. K. Murray here as well. Let's get straight to it then, shall we? That big game at Anfield between Liverpool and Arsenal, which finished 2-2. The big question for everybody has been, was it 1 point gain for Arsenal or 2 points dropped?
Ultimately, for me, it's 2 points dropped. No questions about that. Yeah, we can say all the nice things that we often say with this one. What a season for Arsenal. Normally ahead of the game or ahead of the season, they would have taken that. They've beaten Arsenal at home as well. So, I mean, 4 points out of 2 games against Liverpool isn't all that bad. But given the fact that we're talking about an incredible chance for Arsenal to win the title, one that they didn't anticipate probably ahead of the season, and a chance that may not come around for a long time, because we never know these things, right? We talk about Arsenal and developing, being young and all that, but everybody will get better and it's going to be tougher. So for me, I quite don't understand how Arsenal gave this away. It's absolutely incredible to me. It's a negative mark, if you can say that, on a very good season, because let's face it, after dominating Liverpool at Anfield in such way that very few do, they needed to see that. If they went into halftime 2-0, I suspect that we would have seen maybe Liverpool like we've seen against Manchester City and Real Madrid in the second half, where they would have lost interest, where the cup and the fans wouldn't get behind their team like that. Because let's face it, I think the fans won that game for them. There were flashpoints in that game, Kay, as we all know it. But that one goal just before halftime may be the reason that Arsenal ultimately won't win the title.
That's what I'm interested, though, why you can't believe that they did not see that game through, Arsenal, given the fact of what you're saying now, the Anfield factor. They hadn't won there since 2012. We know that Liverpool are not themselves this season, but we know what happens when teams go to Anfield. So what is it that surprised you so much about Arsenal not seeing it through?
Well, because the domination. When is a team or Arsenal going to get a chance like this, where you go to Liverpool and absolutely dominate? The 2-0 up, it's one thing, but just the way they play, I was waiting for the third goal and for the game to be done and dusted. I've said it kind of in a soft way because I don't want to offend Liverpool and their fans, but I think they capitulated against Real Madrid and Manchester City in the second half. Their psyche is so fragile that I think Arsenal, with that opening in the first half, almost confirmed to me that A, Liverpool is done and has been done for a long time now, but B, that Arsenal, if they do win here, I was going to be here for the first time, probably tell you that Arsenal are going to, I'm going to give it to them because they deserve it. So look, subconscious is a massive thing. And I'm reluctant to go back to the jungle and what Arteta has said last season in the documentary and the preparation for the game against Anfield. But that was silly. I wouldn't have never, ever done it. And this is a confirmation of that, because it plays on you a little bit. And we all know what the Cup and Anfield can do. Because, Liverpool were awful. And all of a sudden, everything changed. The difference between, the first 35, 40 minutes to the rest of the game is stark. And no team should be able to lose composure the way Arsenal have done in that second half.
Yeah, because,
they're lucky, by the way, to get that point, as we know it.
Which is why then you can see it the other way, right, as well, as why they'd be happy, and you can see why some fans are happy with it. So what did go wrong for them then? Because Stevie and I were talking about this yesterday, Janusz, and you could see when the Arsenal players came out at the beginning of the game, they didn't look phased. Even if they were inside, their body language was very strong coming out at this, that they weren't going to feel, they weren't going to get too emotional about what was going on around them. They weren't going to get too scared about the fact that they were playing at Anfield, because we know, we've seen teams that they can get a little bit intimidated by the atmosphere there. But then what did go wrong for them then? Was it their own fault? How could it go from what it did to how it ended with the way you're saying it? What do you think they did wrong to end up only coming away with a point?
Well, it's simple. The subconscious I've mentioned, and they lost control of the game. Look, I mean, when we talk about these two teams, we'll probably briefly talk about Manchester City a little bit later, but I think it's pertinent for me to say this, that the difference between the two and why now I think, I'm still not giving it to anybody, but as everybody knows here, I've been reluctant to give it to Arsenal. I continue to be so even more. And the reason for that is that Manchester City are always in control of the game. Right. I mean, and Arsenal, for the most part, have been as well. And this, to me, was so unusual, because details are fine in all of this, because as we go along and as we later look at the schedule of the two teams, one thing I know for sure, that Manchester City will be in control of every game. Now, they may lose a point, but it's not going to be down to the opposition necessarily. It's going to be down to Manchester City of not finishing their chances. They're going to create plenty. They're going to have the ball. They're going to be deciding how the game goes. And Arsenal, up until now, are at the top of the table for the very same reason. And in this game, all of a sudden, from total control, they went to not really knowing what to do, not being able to keep hold of the ball, making silly mistakes defensively. You look at Zinchenko, and, I'm not just talking the second goal, but even the first goal, I thought he was somewhat at fault for not pressuring Henderson on that redirection. Certainly, he wasn't passing to the far post for the goal to Mohamed Salah. But so individual mistakes and lack of controlling the game, and which to me was really, when you look at that, the way the game went, degree of panic.
Were they missing Saliba, Janusz? Would it have made a difference?
No, I'm not going to put it down to that, because I mean, Saliba has been good, but he certainly isn't, one of the best in the world. In fact, I mean, if you look in the weeds, and statistically, I was looking, some of the marks, Rob Holding was actually quite good. I mean, bringing the ball out of the back and progressive passes, he was very good. Defensively, made a mistake for the penalty, I suppose. It's one of those clumsy ones. Didn't have to pay the price for that as well. But I think on a number of occasions, he was actually quite good. And the same thing with Gabriel, with the exception of that first goal. And again, it was a little bit lucky, unfortunate, one of those goals where, Liverpool scored, but there was a degree of luck in that one. So no, this is not Saliba. This is the midfield. I think inability of Odegaard and Partey and Xhaka to a degree of holding onto the ball, unnecessary loss of possession. And we all know that this Arsenal team should be able to dominate Liverpool's midfield, which they did in the first half for long periods of time.
All right. So obviously we talk about Arsenal's attack a lot, but how important is Aaron Ramsdale for them, especially with what we saw in this game?
Yes, I mean, those two saves in the end. I mean, especially the one with the deflection. I mean, that's superb. The one on Konate, he doesn't even know he was in the right place, but that obviously takes courage, and you have to read the game just a little bit. So I mean, he's an important, but at this stage, that's what you ask of winning teams, right? I mean, there's a reason why Liverpool and Manchester City have arguably two of the best goalkeepers in the world, right? In Ederson and Alisson. So as you build a squad to win big trophies, you've got to have a goalkeeper that when questions are asked, he answers. So I don't want to underplay what he did, because he saved them a point. But I expect that from goalkeepers at the top clubs.
Okay, so what it means now is Arsenal are 6 points clear, but City have a game in hand, and the two are still to face each other, which means that it is in the hands of both teams now to win the title. So let's talk about that title race. What's the psychological factor there for Arsenal now, knowing that City have it in their hands too?
I mean, nothing changes. I mean, Arsenal still at the top. 6 points are 6 points. I continue to stay on the fence, but as you know, I haven't given it to Arsenal because I worry about Manchester City and their quality. And after these 2 points lost, I look at the schedule. I think the schedule favors Manchester City. Not to say that Manchester City are going to be squeaky clean, but let's remember those runs now. 8 wins in the Premier League for Manchester City.
Mhm.
Or no, in all competitions, I think all competitions, 5 straight in the Premier League, which I think beats the record of 4. And that's not necessarily great by City standards, because they have been known to go on runs of 10, 11, 12, 13 wins. I look at that schedule. It favors Manchester City. I think psychologically, after what Manchester City has done so far, not just winning, but scoring 4, 5, 6, 7 goals. I mean, I look at Burnley, right? A team record breakers in terms of how quickly they came back to the Premier League. Well, they've put 6 past them, right? And you can go on and on and on. What they've done in the Champions League against Leipzig. So this is Manchester City prime at their best right now, and with some of the biggest protagonists playing their best football towards the end of the season. That's why I'd worry if I were Arsenal. Game by game, but I look at that stretch where I have to.
We're going to bring it up for you. Let's bring up Arsenal's stretch for you, because I want to know where you think the problems could be here, Janusz.
Well, the problem is City, Chelsea, and Newcastle. Manchester City away, that's going to be a decider. If Arsenal win that, thank you very much, done and dusted. And all that I've said is nonsense. But if Manchester City win at home, which I suspect may be the case, Chelsea's going to find a good game somewhere, I'm sure.
Really? You're really worried about Chelsea coming to the Emirates right now?
Are they coming?
What's giving you concern from this Chelsea side for Arsenal?
Well, there's still Chelsea Football Club, right? I mean, in those big matches. I mean, you could have said, what gives you concern about Liverpool?
Liverpool still had the Anfield factor. We'd just seen them beat Manchester United 7-0.
Yes, but I mean, it's a derby. It's an Arsenal against Chelsea. It's a Chelsea team that's struggling. Their supporters will look at it now. Okay, season's lost, but this is Arsenal. Let's prevent our local London club from winning the title. I mean, it's simple as that. It's pride. I mean, look, in those games for the rest of the season, and we've seen that, Liverpool, Chelsea, it's going to be very little for those clubs to get up for. But there's always a game on the radar where you say, okay, season's done, but this one we have to win. And I worry about that game, and we may come back to that game, because who knows, Chelsea could take points, and even a point away from that goes towards Manchester City's advantage. And then Newcastle away, come on. I mean, if you look at that, it's going to be incredible. This is the 3-game spell in which I think City has Arsenal, Fulham away, and West Ham at home, that you have to say the season may be decided.
There's a question as to whether, if City beat Arsenal and it's a 3-point gap, will Arsenal slip up again? Mental block in the final stretch, maybe, with City creeping behind them.
Look, schedule is what it is. I mean, we're looking at the big teams. You could see, last game of the season, if it comes down, away to Brentford for Manchester City. Not an easy one. We know how tough and how difficult Brentford are in general, but in particular at home, I believe they've only lost a couple of games there. Arsenal was one of the teams that have beaten them there. And Wolves at home for Arsenal. So advantage goes there. I'm looking at form. I'm looking at the squad. I'm looking at the depth of both teams. And I have to say that City at the moment look like they're firing on all cylinders. And all the best players, again, let's have a look at City. I mean, forget about Haaland. With or without makes zero difference. We've seen Manchester City against Liverpool with Julian Alvarez. Absolutely outstanding. For me, the best game Manchester City has played this season in the way they move the ball, right? And we're complaining about Haaland, who now has 30 goals in the Premier League and 44 on the season. In comes Erling Haaland this time. A wonderful header, overhead kick, beautiful, right? I mean, his athleticism, you can't defend him. You can't defend him. Yeah, look at De Bruyne, my goodness.
So you're not on the fence at all, really, are you? You're saying City are going to win the title, because you've always been on the fence when it was more in Arsenal hands. Now it's in both teams' hands. I don't understand how you can be on the fence anymore. Who's going to win the title, Janusz?
Well, I can be on the fence because Arsenal are top of the league with 6 points advantage. So, I mean, I can't give it to Arsenal. I can't give it to a team that's in second place right now, because if it plays out, Arsenal are going to win the title. But I've been consistent week on week in not giving to Arsenal when they had 8 points advantage, when I had 10 points or 11 points advantage, simply because I understand the quality of Manchester City. And yes, I'm leaning after this result towards Manchester City. But I mean, how can you give one to somebody that's in the second place right now? But City are, for me, City are favorites because I just like the makeup, the way they play, the obviously experience of Manchester City in knowing how to negotiate these last few weeks. And one of the reasons that I'm not giving it to Manchester City outright is because they have to look at Bayern Munich twice in the next couple of weeks, and they have to look at Sheffield United in FA Cup, and that's a lot of games in between, and that's not as easy to negotiate. So that's one of the reasons, or maybe the main reason, why I'm still reluctant.
All right, you're going to have splinters from that fence. You've mentioned Haaland, so that's where I want to go next. Pep said Haaland is a machine, like Ronaldo, but Messi's more complete. So basically, that's just paraphrasing what he said, because he was asked if he's now at the level of Ronaldo and Messi. And Pep said, in terms of the thesis of scoring goals, he's quite similar in terms with that with Cristiano, but Messi's more complete. Messi can play wherever, where Cristiano and Erling are machines. And I must say that he did go on to say that Erling Haaland realizes everything that Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo have achieved, and that he's just starting out relatively in terms of that. But what do you make of this whole conversation and putting his name among the likes of Ronaldo and Messi?
Well, I make it as nonsense. I mean, he had to answer the question, but you've said it. I mean, obviously, he's got time. He's got to win as many trophies as Messi has won, or Cristiano Ronaldo. In fact, at this moment, and again, it's not a knock because he's young. He's not as good as Harry Kane, and he's not as good as Robert Lewandowski at his best, right? You know, Robert Lewandowski's older and towards the end. So, I mean, when you look at that, and I could probably come up with another player or two there, but in those four, he still has a long ways to go because of trophies. Now, he's achieved an incredible amount for such a young players right now, and you can say he's on the way, but in terms of overall, he's not as complete, I think, as any of the players that I just mentioned. Nowhere close. I mean, even in that game, and here I go again. I'm going to, I hope that fans don't make me for Erling Haaland hater, because I'm not. I respect him. I think he's a wonderful player. But, we're here for the detail, right? We're not here just to fluff and talk in generalities, because even in that last game, if you watch Erling Haaland before his goals, he looked so uncomfortable on the ball. I mean, it was to a point where he was trying so hard with his first, second touches. He was looking to combine, and it didn't look great, right? He's a pure finisher. He'll never become, Leo Messi, Harry Kane in terms of how he drops and how he combines. Even Lewandowski, going back a little bit. Although Lewandowski is still more of a finisher, I suppose. But even Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't know if I compare him to it. So on many levels, it's way too early. It's unfair. It's somewhat irresponsible to even try to compare Erling Haaland. But in terms of pure finishing, he's up there with anybody.
So you've brought Harry Kane into this one. Is he going to win silverware before Harry Kane?
Oh, yes. I mean, he's won something with Dortmund, right? I'm sure already. I can't even remember. Maybe he hasn't. Apologies right now because you put me on the spot. I can't remember.
I'm just talking about in the Premier League.
Oh, of course, he's gonna win that before. Well, unless Harry Kane leaves and somehow finds himself at, I don't know. I mean, at Manchester United or big clubs, I suppose anything's possible. But yes, overall, certainly Erling Haaland will win many more trophies than Harry Kane.
So obviously, you've talked about the fact that time and consistency has to factor into when he gets compared to the greats of the game right now. What areas does he need to work on? You just mentioned there his work on the ball. What else does he need to work on to get up to the level?
Well, I mean, I still think that technically, I mean, look, and that's hard because maybe we're asking for impossible. Like, as I'm saying all these things, listening to the fans and even listening to myself, I'm asking myself, am I fair to him? I mean, should we be asking him for that? I mean, there are players, as I mentioned, I mean, he's a superb athlete, big man. And maybe he's not made out to be that sort of a player. He's going to get better at that in combination, his technique. I think understanding space a little bit deeper, right? Because he understands space right in front of goal. He knows where his sweet spot is. Absolutely, right? I mean, you saw on that header, he had another header, which I don't know how he didn't put away. I think by his own admission, he said that he should be actually even better in the air. I remember saying it. I remember him saying that even like maybe 2 weeks ago. And you know, that miss on the header was maybe a great example of that. But he's such a forceful, such a big, massive, dynamic player that maybe we shouldn't be asking him for that. Now, we can compare players overall, I suppose, because that's what we do. But I think if he continues to develop his finishing skills and maybe extends his range just a little bit, right, then he's going to be a great player. But in terms of combination, confidence on the ball, and looking to play and play make, that's almost unfair. The only thing I would add to that, look how late Harry Kane has learned to play differently, right? I mean, we never saw Harry Kane do that until, say, maybe last season, right? Where he had that understanding with Heung-min Son and had, I don't know, 14, 15 assists, was absolutely wonderful. But he's changed this game later in his career. So I suppose it's possible. But to be quite honest, I don't see a massive change in the way Erling Haaland plays. And to be fair, if he continues his scoring, who cares? I mean, maybe he shouldn't change.
Okay, lastly then, and it's the ages they are now. We're not talking about one player at a certain age. Who would you rather have if you were the City boss, Erling Haaland or Harry Kane?
I would still take Harry Kane. I mean, if Harry Kane was a little bit younger, let's take Harry Kane.
No, it's as they are right now.
As they are right
now. 29-year-old Harry Kane.
Then I stay with Erling Haaland, because it doesn't really matter, because Manchester City do not need Harry Kane or Haaland, as we've seen last season and as we've seen in the game against Liverpool. I mean, they can play with false nine like nobody.
All right, we're going to talk about the Chelsea side that you said Arsenal need to be worried about, who've just been beaten by relegation-threatened Wolves. What happened here?
We didn't see a bounce, did we? You know, I didn't see the fighting spirit in the first half. We saw a little bit in the second half, in the beginning of it. I mean, the change of managers didn't do anything. This is a team that understands that their season is over. Well, I shouldn't say that. It feels like the season's over, even though there's a massive game or two games coming up against Real Madrid. Zero bounce, which I didn't expect. I think those that knew Frank Lampard knew exactly how he operates. Those that didn't, to me, he's not a person that inspires incredible confidence. And maybe that's not his fault. That's his character. I don't know how he is on the training ground or in the dressing room. Maybe he's different than we see him in front of cameras. I think so far, Frank Lampard hasn't proven that he's a great tactician, that he's experienced enough. And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, I'm not going to put this loss on him, because obviously he's had maybe 1 or 2 days with the team, but he certainly knows the club, knows the players. And I didn't see any reaction to Frank Lampard being named a manager, even if it's just interim.
Was it the right decision from Chelsea, given the time that he's in right now, just to have that stopgap?
No. In fact, I wouldn't go back for him, because, I mean, there's a reason why Frank Lampard was let go of at Chelsea. There's a reason, similar reasons why he was let go of at Everton. I mean, when was the last time he's won a game in the Premier League, right? So I can understand that in the moment of discomfort or even chaos at Chelsea, you bring somebody that's familiar with it. But I almost would have brought John Terry as an assistant manager, right? I mean, real character, right? Everybody kind of jumps up when he probably walks in the dressing room. That would have been something that I don't know if Chelsea did try or not. I don't know if John Terry would have been open to that even, but that would have been my way of going things. No, I just don't think. To be quite frank, this has been a massive risk to the reputation of Frank Lampard, because if this continues, if he doesn't turn around this team, I don't know if he ever gets a job in the Premier League again.
All right. Just to return to it then, after what you've said, just to refresh your memory, you still think this Chelsea side under Frank Lampard, that you're not too inspired by that appointment, are going to cause Arsenal problems?
They can. Well, simply because I've been in this game for too long. I mean, there's still some quality, and on a given day, I mean, they're capable, right? I mean, forget Chelsea, but we don't know. Let's see what frame of mind Arsenal are coming into this game, right? I mean, we're talking about this may be one of the games, those three that I mentioned, Manchester City, Chelsea, and Newcastle. But who knows what happens against West Ham, and I have to look Southampton. So it's quite possible. It's Chelsea are going to get a result here and there that we're going to say, wow, where was this Chelsea before? It just happens because they're Chelsea Football Club, and there is still quality in that team.
So seeing as though it just happens, do you see them getting anything in their meetings with Real Madrid and progressing in the Champions League?
No, I do not. I do not. I mean, Real Madrid are made for these big matches. You've even seen, what happened over the weekend against Villarreal, resting key players, Modric, Kroos.
Beaten.
I'm sorry?
And beaten by Villarreal.
Well, they were beaten because they were looking forward to the Chelsea games. They know the title is gone in La Liga, and there was no Kroos, no Modric. I'm trying to think who else. There's probably another.
So basically, you're saying that Real Madrid putting all their eggs into the Champions League basket, and understandably so.
Of course, it's their trophy. They own it. I'm surprised they haven't given it to Real Madrid to keep it forever right now. But I think we understood that ahead of this. Even if Real Madrid won the game against Villarreal, I still think Barcelona would have won the title as well. So this is the biggest title that Real Madrid crave when La Liga is gone. So I don't see any chance here for Chelsea.
But remember, when Chelsea sack a manager, they go on and win the Champions League.
No.
Not this time.
No.
Not this time. Okay, quickly, we've got to end with Manchester United. Eric Ten Hag's been very upset about the schedule, doesn't like the way that it's been put out for them. Obviously, they've got a lot of games. They're fighting on three fronts at the moment. And this has come out because Marcus Rashford has been forced off with a groin injury. Marcus Rashford, who scored 34% of Manchester United's goals this season. How big a miss is Rashford if he doesn't come back soon?
Well, he's going to be a massive miss. There's no questions about that because, anytime you have a player in form like that, you're going to miss him. But let's not forget, just a few months ago, we weren't talking about Rashford in that way. We were talking about, what's taking so long? When is he going to develop? So I suppose the only good news is that Anthony Martial came back, obviously scored. I don't know how much you can count on him, but this is an opportunity. But I can understand the frustration from Ten Hag, but then again, I mean, it's good to be competing in all those trophies, right? I think maybe he's talking sometimes about placement of the games, the times of the games. As we all know, all managers complain about the lunchtime kickoffs and this, that, or the other. But I think it was just you're quite right. This was more of a frustration of not a great game, although, I mean, they didn't look badly, winning 1-0, but frustration with Rashford and knowing what's ahead, being in a fight for top four, obviously, Europe and the FA Cup. I think that's the only reason, that we're seeing this.
Just quickly to end on it as well, after that loss to Newcastle, we've seen back-to-back wins midweek over Brentford, now this win over Everton. Good response from United?
I like it. I mean, I thought they were excellent in the first half. The flow was back, as I've said. I think that the Liverpool loss, killed their momentum, and that was an unbelievable momentum. A softer patch came, as it often does, to everybody in this league, just about at a point. And right now, I saw in that first half a team that was well organized, that was combining well, that kind of, was back at it, I suppose, and recovering Eriksen is probably a bonus right now. So this is going to be an unbelievable fight, but I regain confidence in Manchester United based on that game, even though it wasn't an incredible game. But again, the right players played well, right? And Bruno Fernandes again was absolutely incredible, pulling strings for everybody. And now kind of, the injury to Rashford, makes us question that because it's so tight. But I have a feeling that others will step up simply because they have to. And I think the biggest thing out of it is that some will get a final opportunity to show that they are Manchester United players. And those players are Anthony Martial. It may be too late, but this is his last opportunity to stay with this big club. Jadon Sancho is another one that has to, again, show flashes, but not enough. It's been a massive disappointment for me, and I'm sure for Manchester United fans. But this will be an opportunity for those players. And let's not forget, Casemiro is going to be back. And that in itself is, I don't know if it's equal to losing Rashford, but it's a massive bonus. So now I think for Manchester United, the question is going to be stay organized defensively. Aside from that Liverpool loss, I think they've been pretty good at that. And I think they'll find themselves through. They'll get through the next round of the FA Cup. And we'll see about Europe, because you know what? I can't even remember who they're playing. Oh,
Sevilla coming up as well in the Europa League. Anyway, good to see you this week, Janusz. Still can't get you off that fence on the title race. And I suppose to summarise, you need to worry about Chelsea if you're Arsenal, but not if you're Real Madrid.
Leaning Manchester City's way, if that makes you feel better.
Thank you very much for watching ESPNFC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.